what Steve's saying. So yeah, I mean, it was a problem, but I do still think, I like to think there's scope for improvement. He could improve. He certainly had a very, very good season last year with Real Betis in Spain. I think, I think you got to all you can do is take the positives from the first half, and there were plenty of them. We were right at it. We were in their faces. There was some good football played, but we didn't create any chances. But very often at that, at this level that we're talking about, as we all know, you have to, as you go forward, you get into that final third, you've got creative players. They have to take risks. They have to try flicks and passes, which are not always, they're more likely to not work than work. And then you need a bit of luck. You need one or two of them to result in clear-cut chances. We probably didn't get the breaks because we did everything else in terms of, pressure and endeavour, and creativity was quite good, I thought. So you've got to try and go with that. You've also got to take a crumb of comfort and remember Pochettino's first few weeks before the second international break in his first season. We were in a really, really bad place. We lost at home to Stoke City, and it was an absolutely dismal performance. Really awful. Not just bad football, not just the seeming lack of a plan or any kind of spirit, but. Yeah, it looked like the manager had lost the team. He'd only been there 8 weeks at that point.
Yeah,
and I think you have to. I'm just looking around for things like that because I actually think Nuno's an intelligent guy and he's a good guy and he has those things in common with Pochettino. I think he's progressive and modern. But what he's going to have to do is do what Pochettino did at that moment, which was decide who's in and who's out, who's going to really go for it and who isn't. He kicked some players out. He banged some heads together. He promoted, if you like, some of the younger players. In that case, it was Mason Mount and Harry Kane, and said to them, look, guys, because they bought into what he was doing and they were completely committed to Tottenham and what. And then it all turned around quite quickly. So I'm hoping that Nuno's going to be strong enough and he's going to have enough backing from, what do you call him? To be able to do that. And as I say, it's still early. So I think, come November time, that's when it's really going to be telling, I think.
I agree.
I just hope he's strong enough to do that,
Well, if he isn't, he'll lose his job. He'll get a bullet, So I think that's what Pochettino realised at that point. The pressure was building. Like you say, it was only about 8 games in, but if he hadn't changed that and we had won that Villa game, we'd been talking someone else.
Yeah.
So he's got to have the cojones really now to just make the team and mould the team how he wants it. Because if he doesn't, he's going to pay the price very soon.
Exactly.
I hope not, because I think he's probably the at the moment probably one of the best managers we can get. I mean, that's our level. We're who else would you get? I mean, we're not going to bring in someone like I know people talked about Conte, but he's not going to bloody come to Spurs. We haven't got the money to chuck at him. So what do we do?
So also, I think the other thing to remember is we have got rid of. So we go and taking your point, which is, is he going to cut some dead wood, et cetera, et cetera? Well, some of that decision has already been made. So, we've moved on Aurier, we've moved on some of the others that he'd obviously seen early on that he wasn't happy with, and he's going to do something about those. So he's kind of, feel like he's dealt with the low-hanging fruit, that's been dealt with. He's got some new players in. He's got to shape it up, you're right, and maybe he'll weed out a few more at Christmas, in the January window, and there's sort of another tranche of things to happen. But that's not to say that we can just carry on being terrible until January and it'll all be all right on the night. But, it's not the same squad that we ended the last season with. They have made some inroads to it. You have to give that time for it to shake through and for it to settle and then do some more. And
you have to give Paratici time to help support him, and that just doesn't happen unless you've had a couple of windows to be able to sort this mess out.
Exactly. So I agree with what Theo was saying, but it's also the case that some of that stuff has started to happen. So you just have to hope that it's going the way they sort of intend, and it will come together over the next 4 or 5 weeks.
So I'm just going to come on to our last couple of questions on this game, actually, but then we'll just do a little bit of a fans in focus based upon our lovely guest, Mr. Delaney. So the last one I was going to ask, penultimate question, is about Kane. Obviously, that's caused a lot of traction on Twitter at the moment. But what are we making of his performances so far? I mean, no Prem goals to date, but his contribution, Sarah?
I think he looks a bit flat, but then, the team's not exactly firing on all cylinders anyway. So there's not much around him to help him. And I think, it's easy to translate that to, obviously he wanted his move in the summer and maybe he's not trying very hard. But I think, frankly, it's a lack of creativity in the squad is affecting him. I think he's professional. I think, he's head down and get on with it. But he's probably a bit fed up and wanting a bit more from the players around him.
Professional, Steve, or sulking?
Professionally sulking, I'd say. I think
very good expression.
I don't know. I think he certainly worked hard in the first half yesterday, but he doesn't even look close to scoring at the moment. Now I don't know if that's if that's a lack of creativity within the team or if that's just him not making like the runs that he needs to throw. And someone mentioned earlier that he was deep in the Chelsea game and receiving the ball and trying to create and stuff. And I think to a certain extent, at some point, he just needs to allow that to happen further. Allow that to happen and be a threat further forward, because without doing that, then he's got no chance of scoring anyway. And we kind of go back to the England games where you listen to some of the pundits there and they go, well, actually, he doesn't need to be that deep. We've got this player and that player to do that, and we can create and build, with good structure, with him being a focal point further up the pitch, and that will then give him the opportunities to be in the right areas to score, because ultimately, he's still the best goal scorer that we've got, and we need him to be in the right areas. And if he's in the right areas, then that gives us an opportunity to find him, really. So,
yeah. Theo, any quick thoughts on Kane?
Well, I hope he's not sulking, because that would be silly from his point of view and very bad news for us. But I mean, maybe it's not so much conscious sulking as, I think he's deflated. I think he really, really, really wanted to leave, and he was, and he was thwarted. And maybe it's just very difficult. Maybe he's sad and he's finding it difficult to shake that off. But I think what he will have to do is realise that if he wants to leave or he wants to achieve any of the things that he wants to achieve, the only way to do it, to guarantee, give himself the best chance of achieving anything that he wants to achieve, is to play at his very best and to score goals. And so hopefully he'll shake it off. He does look a bit flat, to be honest. I mean, even actually, our best actual performance and result of the season was achieved without him, wasn't it, against Manchester City? So he needs to get his act together, not least because we haven't got an alternative to him anyway. We don't have another centre forward unless you count Scarlett, who's a child, so it's a worry.
Yeah, he's got to find that motivation from somewhere. So that's on, I suppose that is on Nuno to bring that out of him.
Yeah.
So $64,000 question here. How far, because you mentioned this before, Theo, about where we were a couple of years back. How far do you think we are now from that side, that challenge for titles, and how do we get back there?
Well, it looks like we're a hell of a long way away from it, but you never know what's going to happen, because after that Stoke game that season, we looked much worse than we look now in terms of the players we seem to have at our disposal and everything. You never know. Players can, if this manager's really good and he gets a bit of luck, he's had none so far, really, although he did get those early results. Some of these players can improve. You just never know. But it's difficult to compete, as we all know, against teams like City and Chelsea, because they're not holding out for a bit of luck. They're not hoping that some of their players might improve. Chelsea and Manchester City and Manchester United buy ready-made top players. So we need, it's going to be very, very tough. But you don't rule anything out. If the manager gets lucky, some of these players really, Brian Romero, I thought looked very promising at the weekend. Yeah. Romero could be could turn into one of the top centre-backs in the league. I think he's got the credentials. He was the best centre-back in the Italian league last year.
That first half,
Brian could be good. Yeah.
The first half, he looked every bit of the £45 million player we're told he was.
Yeah. I think he could be. I mean, it's very early days for all of these new players and they're all showing promise. And Ndombele could finally come. If you remember, people forget that Dembele was really so-so for a couple of seasons before he turned into this godlike kind of imperious midfielder. And it was Pochettino, some did something to him. I don't know what it was, put something in his coffee or something, but he just suddenly changed, went up a level. And players do sometimes do that. And we got the raw material, so I'm not completely despondent. There's no point in being despondent. Otherwise, you just stop going and go watch rugby or something, wouldn't you?
So we're going to come on to the fans in focus now, and we'll do a series of rapid fire questions because I'm conscious of time here for you. So let's start with your family, Theo, sport a variety of clubs. How come you're a Spurs fan?
Well, the Spurs is the family team for the extended Delaney family. Spurs is the team. So my younger brothers, all my brothers are younger than me, and they all took other teams because they wanted their own identity. That's the only real reason. So I was Spurs literally from the cradle. I don't remember being anything else. I've got an uncle. I've got lots of uncles, and I've got one in particular who's only 5 years older than me. So he's a bit more like a brother. And I totally looked up to him. And he was like my role model. And he was Tottenham, so I was Tottenham.
Okay, so you're a commercial and creative director. I've been in a few commercials myself. A friend of mine, Paul Lancaster, was in the Curry's one that you made. Says hi.
Right.
Where he's getting massaged. He said he still has nice dreams about that.
Okay, good.
How did you get into the business?
My whole family was in advertising. I completely flunked out of education. I had a slightly delinquent adolescence. But I got a job. One of my aunts was setting up a film company and I was at a family party and I was stoned actually. And she just said, I'm setting up a company next week. We need someone to come in and run messages and go out and buy the stationery and stuff. And I said, how much money do you get? And she said, probably get about £50. And I went, what time do you have to start in the morning? And she said, about 9:30. And I thought, oh, that just sounds terrible. But then I thought, I haven't got any money. So I said, all right, I'll do it. And I was only hired for a week, but I didn't leave. I just became hooked on this business of making film production, basically, which I knew nothing about at all. I never even worked out how you made a TV commercial. I got completely hooked to the extent that within a year I was writing articles for the trade press on the business. That's how into it I became, and then ended up being a director, which is the best job in that business, you know.
Oh yeah, it's nice. I mean, I've done a few where you end up with a car turning up about 5 a.m. It's a lovely Bentley, but no one in the street can see it because they're all asleep.
Yeah, so, bit of a shame. Wasted.
That's it. So you also brings me on to this. You created the finale tribute for the Lane. So what were some of the highs and lows of creating that day for us all?
Oh my God. Well, it was a very stressful job because, of course, I mean, I've done a lot of stressful commercials, very stressful commercials. But when it's that, it's the weight of responsibility is so much more because, of course, you have to try and stop yourself thinking about it. But what you're aware of is that every Spurs fan on earth is going to be looking at, never mind fans of other clubs, but everybody's going to be looking at that and judging it rightly. You've got to get it right, and so the pressure, I felt a lot of pressure there. They're not easy to work with, quite frankly, Tottenham Hotspur. I mean, I had worked with them before. But of course, I understand that they were under the same pressure as me. I mean, they the eyes of the world was going. We went out all over the world live. So it was tough. There were a lot of low points. We had a few rows. Things went wrong. Like the brass band pulled out with 6 days to go and stuff like that. But I had a really good core team around me. Some of whom I'd brought in, and some of whom I was given. In particular, the music guy, who was my music guy, Steve Sidwell, brilliant. The logistics sort of production guy, Andrew Zweck, who is from the music industry, brilliant at just putting on a show. He works with the Rolling Stones and Roger Waters and everyone. So he's an absolute. Wow. These two are top guys. So I knew that. So the music and the logistics, I didn't have to worry about. So that helped a lot. And all I spent a lot of the time making the film, because obviously I'm a filmmaker, and the big film with Kenneth Branagh was a massive part of it. And that was tough. So the high point, of course, is when it was over. I always knew that would be the high point. Yeah. You just wanted to, you get to the stage where you just want it to be over and you desperately hope it's not going to be a flop. And it actually turned out to be incredibly well received. And that is a feeling that is fabulous,
Well, I'm pretty sure I speak for all Spurs fans when I say thank you very much, because I thought it was absolutely fantastic and so fitting.
Absolutely. I would just say, I didn't realise that you put the whole thing on the whole